Everybody, Tim Buckley joins me. Screen left, I'm screen right. Brad Panovich here in Charlotte. And Tim, we're going to dive right into it because the weather's been pretty stagnant. There's really not much to talk about weather-wise other than the fact that it's been dry, right? And I feel like, sometimes it feels like we're beating a dead horse or it's a broken record, but that's kind of the way droughts are. But we're kind of getting to that threshold, and we've seen some things today, Tim, that are kind of interesting. We're starting to see water restrictions pop up across the state, including one of our biggest cities, Raleigh. Charlotte could be following suit. We'll see. We had smaller communities. But what I think is interesting, Tim, is tomorrow the drought monitor comes out, but the data goes Tuesday to Tuesday, as we know. And my suspicion is a lot of these deciding agencies and governments probably have that Tuesday to Tuesday data already, and that's why we're starting to see the ball rolling with water restrictions. What do you think?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that part, but that's true. We're probably going to see an upgrade across a good chunk of the state tomorrow. We'll wait and see. That usually comes out by around 8 to 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. But this is when the rubber hits the road, when the drought starts to impact the way people go about their business, allowing you to do certain things or disallowing you from doing certain things, like Raleigh's doing over here. I mean, it's saying restaurants are not going to be putting water out on their own, right? And we can go through the other things that they're doing. But there are going to be, changes to how people are going about their business. And it's all precautionary, but considering how long the drought has been going on and how long it will probably continue to go on, you can see where they're coming from. Makes sense.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because, you've been in the Carolinas long enough. I remember our last big drought, the 2007-8 drought, which was pretty significant. It was funny, when I first got to Charlotte, we were coming out of a 4-year drought. This was the 2000 to 2002 kind of time frame. I got here 2003, and I remember I got here, and that's all people talked about was these water restrictions, which had been in effect for a couple of years. And then we had like one of the wettest years on records, and it all kind of went away. But what I thought was interesting, so today I was digging through some of the old, what's called the North Carolina's a Drought Advisory Council. It's basically they get a bunch of people together and decide, okay, what are we going to do? And I was pulling up, and some of these regulations are from 2007, Tim, the last time we had a drought.
Oh, wow.
They came up with some of these, and this isn't, it's really small print, so I'm going to read it. I don't want you guys to read it, but this is yeah, there it is. It's really tiny.
Really small.
Yeah, so this is the default water use restriction measures during an extreme drought designation. Basically, it says you can only water your lawn less than 1 inch of water per week between the hours of 8 p.m. and 8 a.m. We've seen that quite a bit, and that's a common thing. And honestly, Tim, the funny thing about some of these restrictions, it's kind of like common sense watering. I think people overwater when we are not even in a drought. Not watering in the middle of the day makes sense. Like if you're going to water, let's do it at night when it's going to be more beneficial. And people tend to water every day when you really just got to do one deep watering a week. And that's what a lot of these restrictions are. So I think a lot of times people are like, oh, the government's not going to tell me what to do. In many ways, these restrictions are what we should be doing probably on a daily basis that people just aren't doing.
That's a good point. Pretty good tips just to kind of live by, and a lot of these restrictions, like you were saying, they're not even all that restrictive.
Yeah.
If we were really being restrictive here, they would say, don't be watering your lawn at all.
Yeah.
It's just a lawn. Brown grass isn't going to hurt anybody, right? So they're really just kind of giving you tips here to maximize our water, to be smarter about it, and it's not saying you can't do that at all. We could get to that point if it gets a lot worse.
Sure.
But it's not to that point yet. So this is, I think they call it stage 1, right? This is stage 1 water restrictions.
Yeah, we love all the stages. We got we'll move up and down. But yeah, some of those, the restaurant one's interesting. I always find that one's interesting. The other one I always find is kind of fascinating is they don't let you fill up pools with your water from your spigot. I don't have a pool, Tim, so I'm not familiar with, I think what most people do is, first of all, you don't want that water bill. A lot of people buy water. They get a truck that comes to their house, and the water from the truck goes into the pool. You can't wash your car at home. And this is maybe something people don't even know about, and I learned this during our last drought, was commercial car washes are actually required to recycle like 70% of their water. So when you go to like an Auto Bell around here or a Sam's Express, there's actually the water that in the car wash goes down into the grates, and there's big holding tanks under, and they kind of have a water treatment plant under the car wash, and they recycle a lot of that water. So it's actually that's what they recommend. Don't wash your car at home. Go to a commercial car wash because they recycle the water.
That's a pretty good point. And, we talked about this when we had the stormwater folks on. A lot of times, if you're washing the car in the driveway or you're doing any sort of thing at home, that water's just running off into the grass or into the drains or those kind of things. It really is wasted. Right? So that's a great point, that you can actually be recycling more of that water a little bit more. But we're looking at some pictures here of the various lakes and reservoirs. Most of our lakes are reservoirs. And they're showing the impact. You can see that lowering of the water. I know Raleigh was saying that they're at about 84% capacity in their water supply. It varies town by town, but this is something that you're going to notice, that dryness, that little water level, like here on the Anson County camera here. You can see how low that level is. And we've seen this before, but like you said, it's been a while.
That's the PD River right there. So look how low that is. And the PD is one of those rivers that there's actually a big basin. A lot of water goes into the PD. So that's pretty shocking to see it that low in Anson County. The other area we talked about today, we had a reporter that went down to Union County, North Carolina, the city of Monroe. They've had voluntary restrictions, but they're getting to that point where they're going to start implementing more. And we're going to get this story from our reporter, because the pictures tell the story here, Tim. Wait till you see this reservoir down in Union County, how low it is.
Well, I'm going to step out of frame so you guys can take a look here at Lake Monroe at the water levels. Right where that pavement is where city leaders say the water is supposed to reach. And this is an issue they've been facing for the past 7 years, a drought here at the lake. It's also the reason why they say you should be mindful of your water usage.
Monroe has not had a lot of precipitation in the last rolling year. Really stemming from August of 2025, we've had very little rainfall.
Jay Voiles is the general manager of energy services and water resources in Monroe. He says the region is on track to see the driest year on record.
We operate 3 surface water reservoirs here in Monroe that provide drinking water to the citizens. So with the lack of rainfall, means we have less inflow coming into the lakes, which means we have less water to work with when treating it and providing it as drinking water to our community.
In Iredell County, operators of Iredell Water are requiring outdoor watering be limited to just 1 overnight period per week. Other water uses are banned entirely, including washing cars, driveways, and sidewalks. People who live there say they've got some ideas for conservation.
We have come up with creative ways to kind of store water, to take care of the plants or whatever, what have you. And then as far as on the inside, we're what I have done traditionally is try to cut back anyway, but kind of use my dishwasher and wash my clothes and things at off-peak hours.
We've been through it before, and I conserved, and I'll keep on conserving.
Unlike Iredell County, the city of Monroe is not requiring limited usage yet.
So the city of Monroe is currently in stage 1 voluntary conservation, which all that means is there's no mandatory restrictions. We're just nicely asking our residents to conserve water. And that
Now, just to give you all some more perspective, this boat dock here at Lake Monroe is supposed to be underwater, so definitely some very low water levels. Now in Iredell County, those restrictions will remain into effect until further notice. We'll keep you updated as we are expecting an update on the drought status tomorrow. For now, in Monroe, Maria Smith, WCNC Charlotte.
Yeah, Bria, thanks for that. You can really tell how low that water is. James made a good point while she was talking. We're like, what are they waiting for? That looked pretty low. They're only on voluntary down there. It feels like maybe they should be hooking that up to mandatory pretty soon. And I think, Tim, that people are always like, well, what's the big deal? We got plenty of water now. This is always planning down the road, because as you and I both know as meteorologists, once we get to summer, the chances of getting widespread rain kind of go away unless you get a tropical system or something like that. That's why I think we really got maybe the rest of April and maybe May where we get cold fronts or a wedge, or we still have mechanisms to get rain. But once you get into the summer, it's really hard to get widespread rain. So I think that's like thinking ahead down the road is like, man, we get to summer, we're probably not going to get widespread rain, and we could be in really trouble by the time we get there. And that's when people are going to want to use a ton of water, because they're going to start getting hot. They're going to want to be in the pool. They're going to want to be watering their lawns and their gardens a lot more. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on the pattern? Because I know we're focusing on the Sunday chance of rain, which isn't much. But I started looking at the 8 to 14 day hazardous weather outlook, and it looked promising for heavy rain in the middle of the country to our west, but it did not include the Carolinas, which I was kind of sad to see. That it just does not look great for the next couple of weeks.
It doesn't look great. If you're looking I don't know, glass half full, I guess.
Yeah.
There are some opportunities
Yeah.
toward the end of next week, but we know enough to say that could easily vanish. There's not a guarantee that that'll materialize because it's so far away, and there's a lot that we don't know just yet. But if anything, it looks like we might be getting into a pattern where at least disturbances can move through the southeast again.
Yeah.
Right now, we're basically blocked up and deflecting all of these from even getting in here. It's possible by the middle and end of next week, toward next weekend perhaps, that you might start to get some of these moving in here. Now, if you get some of those, we're still in severe weather season. So
Yes.
that might kind of be the double-edged sword that we're playing, but take it as it comes. We'll take some rain however we can get it. Hopefully, it just doesn't come with storms. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's funny you said that, Tim, because it feels weird. Tomorrow's a big anniversary for North Carolina, the biggest tornado outbreak in the state. Today was a big anniversary for you guys up in the Greensboro area. But for me, just personally thinking about it, it's the middle of April, and I really haven't heard thunder or had a thunderstorm per se all spring. It does feel kind of weird.
Yeah, we had the big day back, I guess it was in March, Brad, sometime around there, where we were all systems go, ready to be on alert, and it didn't materialize super well. Y'all had the tornado, right, in uptown Charlotte, but I don't know if there was a lot of lightning with that because just the way the storms were setting up. So we haven't had a very stormy spring in a number of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and so talk about, you guys had this EF2 tornado go through. This is kind of I remember this day because I was watching your guys' coverage, and you guys had some great video. But talk about this, and this was a big deal for the Triad.
This was a bad one. I've been here about 12 years. This was the biggest impact tornado that we've had in our area, at least during that time. There have been worse ones, of course, before then. We've had a couple EF3s, like in Clemens and High Point in these areas. But this one went right through the city of Greensboro. And so a lot of those myths that say you don't get tornadoes in cities, totally wrong. This one went through, it touched down right about where I-40 hooks up with 29. So all of our viewers here in News 2, you'll know where that is. It's not a good spot to drive. But that's where the storm touched down. It rode right up through the eastern half of the city. And what was amazing about this, Brad, is once it stuck on the ground, it stayed on the ground for about 33 miles.
Wow.
So it was a long track tornado. It was not brief at all. It basically went up all the way close to the state line in Virginia. And so it maintained its intensity basically, a good chunk of that lifespan. Miraculously, we didn't have anybody die along the tornado path.
Wow.
There was one death that was a couple miles away from it, just from a falling tree in the thunderstorm. There were injuries, of course. This was a Sunday afternoon. This could have been a much different storm if it were any other time throughout the week. It actually destroyed 3 schools in Guilford County. And so if it were a school day, you hate to think what could have happened. But there were people that were out and about. And so if it were at nighttime, it could have been different. There were a lot of ways that this worked out about as good as it could have, but it still left a huge impact for years around here. The rebuild was pretty tough in East Greensboro specifically.
Yeah, that is a really long track tornado, especially over a very populated area. And it's a miracle you only had 10 injuries, because considering the density population that moved through, that's stunning.
Yeah, very fortunate in a lot of ways, but it was also, through one of the parts of town that, really, really, it took a huge toll. It really was hard to rebuild and needed a lot of help over the coming years. It's looking better now, but it's been 8 years now, so it's been a while.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. And then tomorrow we've got a big anniversary coming up, and I'm sure we'll talk about this tomorrow. This is the biggest outbreak in North Carolina history. April 16th, 2011. Now, I remember this day, but I also remember the entire month of April 2011, because, Tim, what people don't remember about that month, I think I worked like 7 days a week for 3 weeks straight, because we had a baseball-sized hail event here with, supercells coming in with Northwest Flow. We had a derecho. We had the Alabama-Tuscaloosa tornado outbreak. Remember that one to our west? And some of those tornadoes moved into the western part of North Carolina the following morning. And we had a derecho, and then we had this. And this all happened in like a 4-week time span. It was a crazy month, but this was a big one, especially for the central and eastern part of the state. And talk about this. I don't know if if you remember this one, but the pictures were amazing because I remember working that morning all morning and then being glued to RAL and some of the live cameras out east. There's just these giant wedge tornadoes that everybody was getting video of as they were moving across the state.
I was working in Wilmington at the time, Brad, and that was my first taste of really big severe weather. I remember, the storms all fizzled before they got to the coast where we were in the city of Wilmington, but we covered inland counties as well, and we were on TV, especially those boxes you see there from Bladen County to Lumberton and, near Sampson County as well. Basically, every storm had a tornado warning that day. We were on from about noon to 8 p.m. covering some of those, and like you said, these were not typical North Carolina tornadoes. These were more like Kansas tornadoes.
Yeah.
Where they were big ones. They were on the ground a long time. It was a busy Saturday. The weather was really nice before these things came through, so there were a lot of people out and about doing stuff. I think NC State had their spring football game. There were a lot of things going on, and it was a tragic day. There were a lot of deaths with this, and it just kept going. It went all the way up toward the tidewater of Virginia too. Just a long day, and I think the number is 30, right about
32 was the official. Yeah, and that's considered the biggest one-day outbreak from a number standpoint. There's that Enigma tornado outbreak, which is like so far back there's not very good records of, but people talk about that happened here in the Carolinas. This kind of surpassed that. What was interesting about this day, Tim, is we talk a lot about storm mode, supercells and lines. These were supercells, but they were not. They were in a line. It was kind of weird. Look at the radar. So you had like a line of supercells. They were separated enough to maintain supercell status, but there was basically a line of supercells moving east, and it felt like every one of these had, like you said, a big tornado with it that stayed on the ground for like several hours in some cases.
That's a good point. A rare case where you had enough spacing to allow them to spin independently and just kind of maximize the damage and the destruction. Really a bad day. I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about that tomorrow on the program. But kind of in modern memory, that's one of the worst ones that people remember. James had showed it just a second ago. It's that Lowe's Supercenter.
Yeah.
I believe it was not Fayetteville, Sanford. That was the Sanford
yep.
tornado. And it kept going right through Raleigh.
Yeah, there's we'll have to dig up some video for tomorrow. There's people video from inside the store. Obviously, smartphones were a thing. This was 2011, so we had some good, user-generated content. And it was a weekend as well, Tim. It kind of makes you think how worse this could have been if it was during the week as well. Of course, we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Big anniversary for severe weather here in the state. Stick around. More news coming up in 2 minutes.